The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, steady, faint, but to Marissa they felt like a metronome ticking through her anxiety. She sat quietly on the wooden bench outside courtroom 3B, her phone clenched in her palm, the screen dark. Her fingers moved over its edges like rosary beads, grounding her. It had been 3 years since she left the hospice center. 2 since the letters stopped. 1 year and 4 months since she first played that voicemail, just once, before. Saving it under a folder named Truth. And it had been exactly 16 minutes since she'd last considered walking out of the courthouse altogether. The bailiff's voice rang out. Case 47B, Commonwealth vs. Shepard. She stood. Marissa's body moved with a stiffness that came from years of holding herself together. Her cardigan clung to her like armor, her modest heels made soft, deliberate sounds against the marble as she entered the courtroom. No cameras, no press, just another docket in a long list for Judge Karen Lindell, a seasoned jurist with a reputation for efficiency and little tolerance for theatrics. At the defense table, he was already seated. Dr. Stephen Shepard. Her former colleague. Now a sought-after speaker on eldercare policy, a guest on morning shows, and a name attached to a foundation for compassionate aging. His gray hair was immaculately styled. He wore that same expression she remembered, calm, neutral, performative. His eyes didn't flinch when they met hers. The judge glanced down at the file. Miss Marissa Holloway, correct? Yes, Your Honor, she replied, voice clear but low. This is a continuation of your petition for a permanent restraining order. You've submitted written statements, prior reports, and today you're requesting to read a personal impact statement into the record. Yes, ma'am. You may proceed. She took a breath. I worked with Dr. Shepard for 7 years. I respected him. At times, I even admired his work. But that changed when I began noticing irregularities in how he handled certain patients' records. I confronted him privately, then formally, and what followed was not an investigation, but retaliation. For the next year, I received anonymous emails, had my tires slashed twice, and was warned by mutual colleagues to let it go. My license was flagged for a violation that never happened. Eventually, I left the field entirely. The room was quiet. The defense attorney looked bored, doodling in the margin of his legal pad. Marissa went on. I thought it would stop when I walked away. But last summer, I started getting calls. Hang-ups at first. Then messages. All from a restricted number. Always at night. Then one evening, I got a voicemail. At this, Judge Lindell held up a hand. Ms. Holloway, we've reviewed the text of your statement. While I appreciate your persistence, this court does not serve as a platform for professional grievances. You've filed police reports, you've sought HR recourse, and while I understand your distress, I strongly advise, for your own peace, that you move on. The phrase landed like a slap. Move on. Marissa blinked once, twice. She didn't respond. Instead, she reached into her purse, calmly pulled out her phone, and unlocked it. She held it up, not high, just enough for the microphone to catch it. Her thumb hovered a second before she pressed play. The voice that filled the courtroom was unmistakable. At first it was soft, Stephen's voice, low and smug. You think you can smear me and walk away? You think anyone's going to believe you over me? You were nothing in that place. Just a nurse. You don't even have proof. You're going to disappear, Marissa. You hear me? You're going to disappear. There was a long pause. A laugh. And the funniest part is? I didn't even have to try that hard. Silence. Then the judge leaned forward. The courtroom had been cold before, impersonal, procedural, but now it felt frozen. As the voicemail ended, there was no murmur, no rustle of papers, no whispered exchange between lawyers. Just a sharp stillness, like the collective breath of the room had been sucked out. Judge Lindell's eyes didn't leave Marissa. She wasn't used to being challenged. Everyone in the county courthouse knew that. Lindell was known for her precision, her ability to cut through emotional fog and get to the legal point. But now her poise cracked, just slightly. A shift in posture. A glance to the bailiff. Then, finally, to the court reporter. Has that audio been entered into the official record? The court reporter hesitated. No, Your Honor. This is the first time it's been presented. The defense attorney, a man in his 40s with polished shoes and a permanent smirk, stood abruptly. Objection. That recording is inadmissible unless it's authenticated and disclosed through the proper channels. We have no chain of custody. No. Sit down, Judge Lindell said, voice flat. He blinked. Your Honor, I said sit down. He obeyed. Marissa hadn't moved. Her hand still held the phone, the screen now dimmed again. Her other hand gripped the edge of the lectern, knuckles pale. She didn't look triumphant. She looked tired. Tired in a way that came from having screamed into the void for too long. Miss Holloway, the judge said, tone quieter now, when exactly did you receive this message? June 19th of last year, she answered. 9:41 p.m. I was at home. Alone. I saved it, emailed a copy to myself, and made a written transcript the same night. You never submitted this previously? I tried. The detective I spoke to told me it wouldn't be admissible unless I could prove it was his voice. I asked if they'd do a voice comparison. They said it wasn't worth the resources. I was told, again, to let it go. She glanced briefly toward Stephen. He was rigid in his chair now, arms folded, jaw tight. His lawyer whispered something to him, but he didn't respond. Judge Lindell shifted in her seat. She glanced down at the case file again, the thick packet of reports, letters, and complaints. For the first time, it seemed to weigh more. You'll provide a copy of that voicemail to the court immediately, the judge said. Both digital and transcribed versions. I want it submitted by end of day. Yes, Your Honor. Until then, I'm issuing a temporary extension on the restraining order, effective immediately. Dr. Shepard is to have no contact with you directly or indirectly. He is to remain at least 100 yards from your residence, your place of work, and any other known address you frequent. Is that clear? Stephen shifted in his seat. This is absurd, sir, the judge interrupted. You will not speak again unless asked. He clamped his mouth shut. Marissa felt her knees wobble slightly, but she held her posture. She wasn't used to winning. Even this, just a temporary order, just a shift in tone, felt almost surreal. A courtroom had never been a place of safety for her. Not when she reported the falsified records. Not when her nursing license was nearly revoked. And certainly not when she tried, 3 separate times, to file harassment complaints that were quietly dropped, but today was different. As the hearing adjourned and the bailiff announced the next case, Marissa walked toward the rear of the courtroom. A few eyes followed her, but most looked away. No one clapped. No one smiled. This wasn't a TV drama. It was quieter than that. Realer. And the quiet carried weight. Outside in the hallway, she paused near the vending machine. Her hands trembled now, the adrenaline finally cresting. She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes, then she heard it, Marissa. She opened her eyes. It was Olivia, a social worker from her old hospice unit. Younger, kind. Someone she hadn't seen in almost 2 years. I was here for another case, Olivia said softly. I didn't know you were. I heard it. The voicemail. Marissa nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. I just wanted to say I believe you, Olivia said. I always did. That nearly broke her. Marissa managed a tight smile. Thank you. They hugged briefly, not long, not dramatic. Just a simple human acknowledgement that after years of being erased, someone finally saw her. As Olivia walked away, Marissa pulled out her phone again. She stared at the screen, the familiar folder labeled Truth still open. There were other messages in there, texts, screenshots, incident logs. She had documented everything. Not out of revenge. Not for glory. But because someday, she knew someone would finally listen, and now, maybe, they would. The morning after the hearing felt quieter than usual. Not in the peaceful sense, but in that strange, suspended silence that follows a seismic shift. Marissa sat at her kitchen table, a mug of lukewarm coffee cradled between both hands. Her townhouse in Arlington always felt a little too big since her divorce, but today it felt almost appropriate, spacious, still, like it was holding its breath with her. Sunlight stretched across the floor in thin golden lines. The clock read 7:26 a.m. She hadn't slept much. After returning home from the courthouse, she'd tried to rest, but her mind had refused to shut off. She kept replaying the judge's reaction, over and over. The moment her words were finally taken seriously. The shift in the courtroom. The power in Stephen's voice, no longer threatening, just recorded. Documented. Real. A knock on the door pulled her out of the thought spiral. She hesitated, set the mug down, and approached the door cautiously. Through the peephole, she saw a tall man in a plain gray suit, early 50s maybe, with a government-issued ID clipped to his belt. She opened it a few inches, chain still in place. Miss Holloway? I'm Detective Granger. Arlington PD. I'd like to ask you a few questions regarding the voicemail you played in court yesterday. Her stomach tensed. You're here now, she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Yes, ma'am. If you're comfortable, I can speak to you here, or we can schedule a formal interview at the precinct. She considered. One moment. She unchained the door and let him in. He stepped inside respectfully, eyes scanning the space without intruding. Thank you. I won't take much of your time. They sat in the living room. Marissa handed him a printed copy of the voicemail transcript, along with a USB drive she'd prepared late the night before. You mentioned in court that you sent a copy of the voicemail to yourself. Is this that version? Yes. It's the original audio file, downloaded the same night. I've never altered it. You can check the metadata. He nodded. We'll authenticate everything. I'll also request a forensic comparison to Dr. Shepard's known voice samples. That may take a few days, but the recording itself is a strong lead. Marissa didn't speak for a moment. I submitted this to another detective last year, she said finally. They dismissed it. Said without witnesses or context, it was circumstantial. I tried contacting your department again when the messages escalated. I never got a call back. Granger didn't flinch. He simply nodded, slowly. I read your case file. You've been trying to be heard for a while. She looked at him, trying to read his face. I won't promise anything I can't deliver, Ms. Holloway, he said. But I can promise I'm taking this seriously now. The voicemail changes things. He handed her a card. If anything happens, any contact, surveillance, unusual vehicles, anything, call me. I'll update you once we've confirmed the voice match. As he left, Marissa stood at the door, card in hand, unsure whether she felt vindicated or just more exhausted. The moment of courtroom triumph had already begun to fade, replaced by the familiar sense that justice, if it came, would do so slowly and on its own terms. That afternoon, she visited a cafe a few blocks from her home, a quiet corner spot where she used to write nursing reports and treatment plans. She hadn't been back in over a year. As she stirred honey into her tea, a voice called out softly behind her, Marissa? She turned. It was Claire, another former nurse from her hospice team. The two had once been close, until things with Stephen escalated. Claire's face carried the weight of uncertainty. She approached the table cautiously. I saw your name on the court docket yesterday, Claire said, sitting across from her. I didn't know you'd kept going with this. Marissa shrugged. It didn't stop. So neither did I. Claire nodded. I heard the voicemail. People are talking. Some in the department are nervous. Marissa raised an eyebrow. Claire leaned in. There were others. Not like you, not directly harassed. But pressured. Aides who were told to alter notes. Patients' families who were misled. Some of us wanted to speak up, but no one wanted to be the first. You were the first. The words landed with a quiet weight. I'm not saying this as an apology, Claire added. But maybe it's not too late for the rest of us to say something now. Marissa's eyes welled, but she blinked it back. You don't owe me anything, she said gently. Just make it mean something. That's all I've ever wanted. That night, her phone buzzed at 11:08 p.m. A restricted number. Her blood went cold. She let it ring. Then she opened her voicemail. Nothing. But when she checked the message log, it was there. 5 seconds of silence. She saved it anyway. Marissa sat in bed, the screen of her phone dimmed to its lowest setting, her thumb hovering over the new voicemail entry. 5 seconds of silence. That's all it was. But she knew better. Silence could be louder than shouting when it came from the right source. She'd already saved it. Forwarded it to the same folder. But now she played it again, staring into the dark room, the glow from her screen casting a soft blue light across her face. Nothing, just a faint hiss, like air through a cracked door. Still, she felt it, the intent. A reminder. A whisper without words. I'm still here. The next morning, the world carried on as if nothing had changed. The air was warm for early spring. Marissa moved through her routine with robotic grace. Coffee, email, morning walk. She passed neighbors she barely knew, waved to a dog walker she recognized from her block. Nothing about her body language said she was waiting for another shoe to drop, but inside, the tension returned. Not full-blown fear, something subtler. The kind of hyper-awareness that comes after surviving something corrosive. Not quite in the past, not quite present. A state of almost. At 11:13 a.m., her phone buzzed again. A number this time, not restricted. Detective Granger, she answered quickly. Good morning, Ms. Holloway. I have an update. She sat down, heart rate already climbing. We ran the voicemail through our forensic audio team, he continued. The preliminary analysis shows a 96% match with Dr. Shepard's recorded voice samples from past lectures and interviews. We'll run a secondary test, but it's strong enough for a formal investigation. Marissa exhaled slowly, silently. So, what happens now? We'll be issuing a subpoena for his phone records and financial activity around the date of the message. I'm also contacting the DA's office. With your cooperation, we're preparing to move this forward as a criminal harassment case. She closed her eyes. Thank you. Granger paused. I should also mention, I reviewed the full pattern of your calls. I saw the hang-ups, the timestamps, even the dead air ones. Last night's 5-second message, it fits the pattern. It's subtle, but it's a continuation. Document every one of them. I already do, she said. I figured. Later that afternoon, she found herself pacing the perimeter of her living room, the phone still in her hand. She knew she should rest. But there was something unsettled inside her, not fear, exactly, but a kind of low-level urgency. The itch of unfinished business. She opened her laptop and scrolled through an old folder labeled HR files. Years ago, she had archived every email, every scanned letter, every piece of internal correspondence from her time at the hospice facility. She hadn't opened it in months. Buried deep, she found a message from Stephen, dated March 17, 2018, a week before she formally reported the patient record discrepancies. Marissa, let's not go down this road. It's messy, and I don't think you understand the full scope of what you're walking into. Let's talk, just you and me. We can clear this up. You don't want to be the one who opens that door. At the time, she'd read it as caution. Now it read as something else entirely, a veiled threat. A first crack in the mask he wore so well. One more thread she hadn't pulled hard enough. By evening, she was on the phone with Olivia. I need to ask you something, Marissa said. Anything? That patient, Helen McCarthy. Remember her? Room 209? Passed in 2018. Her records were some of the ones I flagged. I always believed Stephen changed her status codes to hide the fact she'd been denied the pain meds her family authorized. I remember, Olivia said, her voice tightening. I remember that week. Her daughter came in furious. Said Helen was in agony her last 48 hours. Said we'd ignored the care plan. I think that's when it started, Marissa said. That's when Stephen knew I wouldn't look away. I need that case reviewed. The original medication logs, the digital timestamps. I know I'm not staff anymore, but, do you think you could get me access? A pause. I'll try, Olivia said. But I have to be careful. Management still talks about you like you're radioactive. And Shepard's name is still everywhere. Donations, endorsements, speaking engagements. I understand, Marissa replied. I'm not asking you to risk your job. But if we can prove he altered medical records, we'll have more than harassment. We'll have criminal negligence, Olivia finished. That night, the wind picked up outside her townhouse, rustling the trees in the narrow strip of yard behind her building. She stood near the window, watching shadows shift across the grass. She hadn't told Granger everything yet. Not about the car she thought she saw parked outside twice last month. Not about the stranger who brushed too close at the pharmacy. Nothing provable. But the pattern was growing clearer. Stephen wasn't done, and if the voicemail had changed the game, she knew it had also drawn a line. For years he had counted on silence. On intimidation. On her willingness to quietly fade into some kind of defeated anonymity, but the rules were different now. She was documenting. She had allies again. She was no longer the only voice in the room. Still, that didn't mean she was safe. At 2:17 a.m., her phone lit up once more. Restricted number. She let it go to voicemail, heart pounding. Waited a full minute before playing it. This time, there was a voice. A woman's voice, soft, almost kind. You're making this worse for yourself. You don't know what he's capable of. You should have left it alone. Marissa sat frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear long after the voicemail had ended. She replayed it twice, each time parsing every inflection, every syllable of that calm, anonymous voice. A woman, someone who sounded like she knew Stephen. Well, intimately, even. But she wasn't defending him, not really. It wasn't a plea for justice or forgiveness. It was a warning. A quiet one. That alone made it more unnerving than any threat so far. She opened the voice memo app and saved it to the truth folder. Then she began transcribing. You're making this worse for yourself. You don't know what he's capable of. You should have left it alone. No name. No background noise. Nothing distinctive. But it was intentional, timed, and just cryptic enough to stay within the legal boundaries of plausible deniability. She forwarded the recording and the transcript to Detective Granger, along with a short note. This came in at 2:17 a.m. Female voice. Likely connected to Shepard. Possibly an employee or associate. Please advise. She didn't sleep after that. By morning, Granger had replied. Received. Tracing the origin, but number was spoofed. Pattern confirms active intimidation. Will escalate to DA. Stay alert. Simple. Factual. No comfort offered, and she respected that. Comfort wasn't what she needed right now. She needed this process to keep moving. At 9:03 a.m., another message came through. This time from Claire. Call me when you can. Something you need to hear. Not over text. They met that afternoon at a public park in Alexandria, neutral ground. Claire sat on a bench facing the river, sunglasses on, legs crossed. She looked uncomfortable, like someone watching shadows move under still water. I shouldn't even be doing this, she said before Marissa could speak. Then why are you? Claire sighed. Because I remember what it was like. Being in that place. Watching him get away with everything. The rest of us just stayed quiet, like it was survival instinct. But after yesterday, there's been talk. Nurses. Techs. Even. A few admin staff. Talk about what? Claire glanced around, then leaned closer. That you're not the only one he's done this to. Harassment. Manipulation. Threats. Quiet blackmail. A few of them have stories, some recent, some old. Nothing official, of course. No one wants to put it in writing. But it's real. One of them described almost the same voicemail you played. Marissa felt her chest tighten. Who? She. Won't go public. Not yet. But there's a pattern forming. I told them you're not backing down. That you're working with a detective. That this is moving beyond HR complaints. Are they scared? Terrified, Claire said. But they're listening. Marissa absorbed that .it wasn't vindication, not yet. But it was the beginning of a shift, the moment a whisper network started to find its voice. The stories that lived in break rooms and deleted drafts were starting to surface. I need to speak to them, Marissa said. Even if it's off the record. I want to hear what they've been through. I want to connect the dots. Claire hesitated. I'll see what I can do. That evening, Marissa sat at her dining table with her laptop open and a notepad beside her. One by one, she began building a timeline. Not of her own story, but of his. March 2018, patient Helen McCarthy's case altered. April 2018, Marissa reports discrepancies to management. September 2018, anonymous emails and messages begin. 2019, Marissa resigns. Informal HR complaint unresolved. Early 2020, 2 colleagues abruptly transferred after challenging scheduling practices tied to Stephen. June 2023, voicemail received. Threat plus implicit confession. Present. New pattern of late-night calls, female voice appears. She sat back, studying the map. A pattern was emerging. He escalated only when threatened. And when women pushed back, when they got too close to exposing him, his tone changed from charm to menace, but what rattled her most was the female caller. Who was she? Someone loyal to him? Someone compromised? Or someone who had once been where Marissa stood, but had broken under pressure? Her phone buzzed again. Olivia, I got into the patient records, Olivia said quickly. Helen McCarthy's file was accessed and edited on 3 separate occasions after her death. By someone logged in under Stephen's credentials. Did they change the medication log? Yes. Pain management records were deleted from the final 48 hours. The family's authorization note is missing from the digital file. But I found a scanned copy, buried in the system under her daughter's surname. Probably hoping no one would link it. Can you export it? Marissa asked. I already did. PDF and screenshots. I'll send them tonight. Marissa closed her eyes. Another thread tugged loose. Liv, this isn't just about harassment anymore. This is medical fraud. Possibly manslaughter. I know. A long silence. Are you okay? Olivia asked gently. Marissa opened her eyes. I don't know. But I'm not scared anymore. Not the way I used to be. That night, she received an email from Claire with no message, just a subject line, 3 of us. We'll talk tomorrow. Attached was an audio file. Marissa clicked play. 3 voices, all women. Different ages, different tones. Each spoke quietly, like someone testing the strength of their own truth. He told me I'd lose my job if I said anything. He said he could ruin my certification. I recorded him once, too. I never showed anyone. I didn't think anyone would. Believe me. Marissa stared at the screen as tears slid silently down her cheeks. She wasn't alone, not anymore. The next morning brought rain, the soft, unhurried kind that soaked the streets of Arlington in a film of melancholy. Marissa sat by the window with her second cup of coffee, watching the water bead and slide down the glass. It had become a ritual since the hearing, this quiet moment to center herself before the weight of the day settled back onto her shoulders. But today was different. She had names. 3 women. Claire had sent her the audio file late the night before. Each voice anonymous, each testimonial edited to remove identifiers. But it was enough. More than enough. There were other survivors. Women who had been harassed, silenced, coerced, just like her. They were scared, yes. But they were beginning to speak. She checked her phone. A new message from Claire. They'll meet you. Neutral location. I booked a back room at Harmony Cafe, 3 p.m. No pressure. Just listening. Marissa typed back quickly, I'll be there. Thank you. At 2:58 p.m., she stepped into Harmony Cafe, a quiet, wood-paneled spot just off a residential strip in North Arlington. The place was known for being warm and discreet. A small chalkboard sign near the door read, Back room reserved, private. Event. Claire was already waiting at a table with 3 women, all mid-30s to early 50s. One wore scrubs under a raincoat. Another, glasses and a black cardigan. The third had her arms crossed, fingers tapping against her forearm like a metronome. "Hi," Marissa said, trying to keep her voice level. "I'm Marissa Holloway." They nodded. No one stood. No introductions offered. Just eye contact. It was enough. Claire gestured to the empty chair. "This is off the record. No pressure to share anything you don't want to. We're just here to connect." Marissa Saturday, the woman in scrubs, spoke first. "My name's Julia. I worked in the wound care unit. 2019 to 2022. I had one run-in with him, something small at the time. He touched my shoulder, said something about how I brought softness to the floor. I laughed it off. Later that week, my shift schedule got gutted. Overnight. I complained. HR told me to be more flexible. The woman with glasses, Carla, jumped in. "He found ways to punish you without ever leaving fingerprints. With me, it was references. I applied for an advanced nursing position out of state. They called the hospice center for verification. Never heard back. When I followed up, they told me my clinical evaluations were marked as inconsistent. I pulled my own file. There was nothing like that in it. It was sabotage." The third woman, still silent, finally spoke. Her voice was gravelly, cautious. "He said he'd destroy my career if I ever played that voicemail. So I kept it to myself." Marissa's eyes snapped to her. "You recorded him too?" A nod. "Not long. Just a few seconds. He knew what I'd seen, a patient medication switch. I wasn't even going to report it. I just asked about it, offhand. Next thing I knew, he cornered me near the staff elevators and said, 'You think you're special? You're not. You're replaceable. You say one word, and you're done.'" I had my phone in my pocket. I hit record without looking. "Do you still have it?" Marissa asked softly. Another nod. "It's buried in my Google Drive. I haven't touched it since." Marissa leaned forward, not as an investigator, but as someone who had once sat in that same silence. "I know what it cost you to carry that alone. But things are different now. We're not isolated anymore. There's power in putting it all together." Julia chimed in. "How can we help? What does helping even look like?" Marissa took a deep breath. "We create a dossier. Not a legal case, not yet. A record. Your stories. Screenshots. Voicemails. Schedule changes. Everything. I've been collecting my own for years. But what makes this different is that it's not just mine anymore." She pulled out a flash drive from her bag and set it on the table. "I'll handle redactions. No names if you're not ready. But if we show the pattern, someone will have to act." By the end of the meeting, they had a plan. Julia would gather emails about her scheduling disputes. Carla would request her personnel file, claiming she needed it for an unrelated job hunt. And the third woman, Leah, promised to retrieve her recording that night. No one hugged. No one cried. But as they parted ways in the rain, there was a quiet kind of solidarity between them, the beginning of something real. Not just shared trauma. Shared strategy. That evening, Marissa sat at her kitchen table again, uploading files and organizing folders. She created a master document titled, "Pattern of Behavior, Dr. Stephen Shepard, Preliminary Witness Accounts." Underneath it, she listed, voicemail transcript number 1, June 2023, threat and confession, voicemail transcript number 2, April 2025, female voice, indirect threat. Witness 1, Julia, scheduling manipulation following harassment. Witness 2, Carla, career sabotage, altered evaluations. Witness 3, Leah, audio recording of verbal threat. Patient record discrepancy. Helen McCarthy, verified by Olivia. As she worked, her inbox chimed. Subject, recording from, Leah. Attachment, Shepard_elevator audio. M4 Ash clicked it open. Heart thudding. Stephen's voice, unmistakable. "Do you understand what happens next if you don't walk away? I make one call, and you're gone. And no one will believe you. Not because you're wrong, but because I'm louder." Click.it was short. 12 seconds. But it was damning. She saved it in 4 places, then she sent the full updated dossier to Detective Granger with a simple message: "There are more of us now." The response came within an hour. Received. "The case is expanding. I've alerted the ADA. Please be prepared to testify. We'll contact you soon." For the first time in years, Marissa felt it. Not relief, not victory, a momentum, and that, more than anything, meant he had something to lose. The Arlington County District Attorney's Office wasn't glamorous. The waiting area smelled faintly of burnt coffee and government-issued carpet, and the hallway buzzed with the low tension of ongoing cases. Marissa sat with her hands clasped, a manila folder resting on her lap. Inside it, printed transcripts, her timeline, screenshots, a hard copy of everything she had already submitted digitally. She hadn't been summoned under subpoena. Not yet. This meeting was preparatory. Per Detective Granger. But she knew what it meant. The investigation was moving into its next phase. A potential grand jury. Formal charges. The possibility that, for the first time, someone with power was considering putting Stephen Shepard on trial. Across from her sat ADA Caroline Mehta, mid-40s, sharp but composed, with a calm focus that never quite softened into empathy, a look Marissa had come to recognize in people who had learned how to listen without becoming too involved. "We've reviewed your materials," Mehta said. "The voicemail you played in court, along with the new audio from the elevator, the supporting statements, and the patient record discrepancy, it's significant. But you understand, Ms. Holloway, that significant doesn't always mean prosecutable." "I understand," Marissa replied, her voice steady. Mehta studied her. "Still, the combined witness accounts form a pattern, one that could support charges of harassment, obstruction, and possibly coercion in a medical setting. That last one is rare, but under Virginia law, it carries weight." Marissa nodded slowly. "That's all I've ever wanted. For it to carry weight. We'll be interviewing the other women. If they're willing to testify, even anonymously, even by affidavit, it strengthens the case considerably." "They're scared," Marissa said. "But they're watching. If they see you take this seriously, they'll step forward." Mehta looked over her glasses. "Then we'll show them we are." Outside the DA's office, the wind had picked up. Marissa wrapped her coat tighter and stepped out onto Courthouse Road. Her phone buzzed before she'd even reached the crosswalk. A text from Claire, "He knows. Meeting was cancelled. Word is he's lawyering up." Marissa's stomach turned. But she kept walking. She had expected this. Stephen was too calculating not to notice the walls closing in, and sure enough, that evening, it happened. The news broke just before 8 p.m. A local blog, Metropulse DC, had posted a short article. Public health advocate Stephen Shepard facing harassment allegations, former employees speak out, no names. No direct quotes. But it referenced anonymous sources within the Arlington hospice system. A coordinated pattern of retaliation and misconduct. It mentioned a court hearing. A voicemail. The word intimidation was used twice. She clicked on the comment. Section.it was already filling up. "Isn't this the same guy who was on Channel 9 last month talking about dignity in death? Worked with him briefly. Not surprised. These women are just bitter. Where's the evidence? If it's true, I hope they bury him." Marissa scrolled for a while, her pulse rising. Then she closed the browser. She didn't need validation from strangers, but she did need to prepare for what came next. By morning, her email inbox had exploded. 3 were from old colleagues, one apologetic, one curious, one vaguely supportive. A message from a local advocacy group offering resources and legal referrals. But one stood out. Subject: "I know that voice from." Anonymous message: "I heard the second voicemail. The woman warning you. I think I know who it is. I used to work with her. We should talk." No name. No phone number. Just a Proton mail address and the suggestion of a breadcrumb. She replied immediately, "Please. I need to know." At 2:40 p.m., another message came through. "Her name is Danielle. She was Stephen's executive assistant until 2021. Left suddenly. No one knew why. Rumor was she had a breakdown. But she wasn't unstable, she was terrified." Marissa. Read the message twice. Danielle, the name triggered a memory, a quiet woman with auburn hair who used to shadow Stephen during hospice board meetings. Always taking notes. Always invisible. If she was the voice behind the 2:17 a.m. warning, then the narrative had shifted again. Not a loyal follower, a frightened former insider. Marissa forwarded the tip to Granger, who responded within minutes. Already on her radar. "She's in Oregon now. I'll reach out through proper channels." Good lead. That evening, Marissa sat with Olivia again, this time at her place. They ate dinner at a small kitchen table cluttered with case files and notebooks. "This feels big now," Olivia said quietly. "It is," Marissa replied. "Do you think he'll run?" "No," she said. "He's too proud. He thinks he can manage the optics, like he always has. Frame himself as a victim of bitter women with vendettas. But the difference now is, we have receipts." Olivia leaned back. "You realize this might destroy his foundation. His name is attached to half the palliative care initiatives in the state." Marissa set her fork down. "Good. Maybe then people will finally start asking why one man had so much unchecked influence in a system meant to care for the dying." A long silence passed between them. Then Olivia said, "If this goes to trial, I'll testify. About the altered records. About what I saw." Marissa met her eyes. "Are you sure?" "No," she said. "But I'm ready anyway." At 10:37 p.m., another voicemail landed. No caller ID. 5 seconds of silence, then, a breath, and a whisper. "You think you've won." Click. Marissa stared at the screen, Her heart steady, she saved it, titled the file, "Last Attempt," maybe. Then she turned off her phone. For the first time in years, she slept through the night. Marissa woke to sunlight bleeding through the blinds, soft and golden, the kind of light that usually signaled calm. But there was none of that now. Calm had been replaced by resolve, and the glow of morning felt like a spotlight, not a comfort. Her phone was still off. She turned it back on deliberately, screen blinking to life. No new voicemails. No restricted numbers, just a message from Detective Granger. "Danielle L. confirmed. Willing to speak." She's scared, but you were right, she was the voice. Initial statement recorded over video call. "We're protecting her identity for now. She corroborates your timeline and confirms Steven used her to suppress complaints. Says he destroyed records. Possibly falsified legal documents." Marissa read it again. And again. Danielle, the soft, warning voice at 2:17 a.m., wasn't trying to silence her, she was trying to save her. By mid-morning, her inbox had filled again. One email from ADA Caroline Mehta, marked "Priority," stood out. Subject: Possible grand jury, Shepherd case. Ms. Holloway, we've formally opened the case under charges of harassment, intimidation, and professional misconduct. If the grand jury returns an indictment, trial proceedings may begin within 6 to 8 weeks. Your testimony will be a key component, along with Ms. LS and the other whistleblowers. We are also preparing witness protections if necessary. Please do not speak with the media. Your safety remains our concern. We will be in touch regarding official prep sessions. ADA Caroline Mehta. Marissa placed her hands on the edge of the kitchen counter and let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. This was it. The slow wheels of the system were finally moving, and they were moving toward him. That afternoon, Claire invited her to speak with a small group of current hospice staff. Quietly. Off campus. No names, no commitments. Just ears. The location was an old community hall behind a church near Clarendon, tucked between a playground and a row of oak trees. A space for potlucks, baby showers, and now, maybe, something more important, there were 9 people inside. When Marissa arrived, 7 women. 2 men. All seated in a wide circle of folding chairs. Their faces were familiar, some achingly so. People she used to pass in hallways, nod to over coffee. All of them now wore the same expression, cautious, alert, and searching for permission. Claire stood to speak. "I told you I'd bring her. She's the reason we're here at all. You know the story. Now you can hear it from her." Marissa stepped forward, her hands unclenched, her voice calm. "I'm not here to lead a movement," she said. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because someone decided that my silence was more valuable than my truth. And I carried that silence for years. It chipped away at me. Until I realized I wasn't the only one." She scanned the room. No one broke eye contact. "You're here because you've seen it, too. Maybe it didn't happen to you directly. Maybe it did. But you stayed. You watched. You endured. And I know how much energy that takes. How it becomes normal to tell yourself it's not your place. That it's too risky to speak up. That he's too protected. Too important." A murmur moved through the room, agreement, unease. "But here's the thing," she continued, her voice firmer. "He's only powerful because we've allowed him to isolate us. To make us believe we're alone. But we're not. And when we speak together, he's the one who becomes small." A long silence followed. Then, one by one, hands went up. A woman, in her 20s, fresh out of nursing school, shared how Steven had belittled her during a training session, calling her too soft for palliative care in front of 2 supervisors. A hospice coordinator described an anonymous complaint about her conduct that mysteriously appeared after she refused to schedule a dying patient in a facility Steven was privately invested in. A janitor, older, spoke haltingly about a conversation he overheard, Steven threatening to bury someone in paperwork if they didn't back off. Each voice added weight, substance, context. Marissa didn't take notes. She didn't need to. She had learned to listen, not just to the words, but to the exhaustion beneath them. The way trauma lingered in pauses, the way fear lived in the careful language people used when talking about power. When the meeting ended, no one rushed out. They stood in small clusters, exchanged numbers. Quiet alliances were forming, not loud or organized, but real. Before leaving, a nurse named Tammy, mid-40s, approached her. "I wasn't sure about coming," she said. "But I just wanted to say, thank you. Not for what you said. For staying. For not disappearing. It's easier to pretend we don't know what we know when the ones who speak up are gone." Marissa swallowed hard. "Thank you for still being here," she replied. That evening, at home, she opened her laptop and clicked open a document she hadn't touched in over a year, a draft letter she once wrote to the State Board of Nursing. Back when she still believed it would make a difference. It had started with, "To whom it may concern, I'm writing to raise a concern about patterns of behavior I've witnessed. She highlighted the entire page, deleted it, and typed instead, "This is no longer a concern. It's a record. My name is Marissa Holloway, and I'm no longer asking to be believed. I am submitting evidence." She saved the file as statement_for_trial then. She checked her voicemail. Nothing new. No silence. No threats, just stillness. The story was no longer about Stephen. Not really. It was about the people who stayed, the ones who whispered, then gathered, then finally spoke, the ones who once kept their heads down, but now met in circles, not as victims, but as witnesses, and Marissa, once isolated, dismissed, told to move on, was no longer standing alone. The summons arrived on a Tuesday. A thin white envelope, no markings other than the county seal and her name typed plainly across the front. Marissa stared at it for a full minute before opening it with a letter opener she hadn't used since. The Pandemic, Commonwealth of Virginia Notice of Testimony, Grand Jury Appearance Investigation into Stephen Shepard. There it was. In black and white, not a formality. Not a hearing. An official step toward prosecution. She set the letter on her dining table and stared out the window. The trees out front had started to bud, soft green bursts against the gray. The world outside was moving into spring. Inside, she felt caught between two seasons, the cold of everything she'd endured, and the first warmth of real change. 2 days later, she stood outside the courthouse in a navy blazer, heels planted firm on the concrete. Detective Granger met her at the entrance. "You ready?" he asked. "I'm not sure that's the right word," she said. "But I'm here." He gave a small nod, then guided her inside. No press. No cameras. Grand jury proceedings were sealed. Secret by design. Meant to protect the process. And, sometimes, to protect those whose stories were finally being heard. Ada Caroline Meta waited at the end of the hall. "You'll be sworn in. Then you'll speak. Just like you've done before, only this time, it's under oath, and it's the jury you're speaking to." "What should I expect?" "Silence. They can't respond. They'll listen. Take notes. Maybe ask questions at the end. The goal isn't to trip you up, it's to decide if there's enough evidence to indict." Marissa nodded. "What happens if they don't indict?" Meta paused. "Then we find another way. But let's focus on the one in front of us." Inside the chamber, the air felt denser. A long table. Jurors seated in a wide semicircle. A stenographer in the corner. Meta stood to the side, hands folded. A clerk swore Marissa in. She raised her right hand, repeated the words. The same voice she'd used in hospice rooms, calm, measured. "Return now," she began with the voicemail. Played it aloud. The echo of Stephen's threat filled the quiet space. "You think anyone's going to believe you over me? You were nothing in that place. Just a nurse." Not one juror flinched. Then she described the harassment. The late-night calls. The slashed tires. The warning from the woman who turned out to be Danielle. Next, she named the altered patient records, Helen McCarthy, and described Olivia's verification. Meta asked a few clarifying questions. "Did you ever threaten Dr. Shepard or attempt to extort him in any way?" "No," Marissa said clearly. "I wanted an investigation. That's all." "Did you ask anyone to fabricate or exaggerate testimony on your behalf?" "Never. They came forward on their own. Most of them reluctantly." Finally, Meta looked to the jury. "You've heard her. You've seen the materials. The other statements corroborate a clear pattern, one of abuse, intimidation, professional misconduct, and in at least one case, deliberate alteration of a patient's medical record. We're not asking for conviction. We're asking for the right to try." The clerk gestured. Marissa stepped down. Outside, she exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. Granger approached quietly. "They'll deliberate in private. Could be hours. Could be tomorrow." She nodded. "What do I do in the meantime?" "Go home. Or don't. Go somewhere that reminds you you're still living your life." Marissa didn't go home right away. She drove to the old hospice center, the place where it had all begun. The building sat back from the road, a single-story structure with soft beige walls and wide windows. It looked harmless. Compassionate, even, but every hallway held echoes. She parked but didn't go inside. Just sat there, watching. A nurse wheeled a patient out to a garden path. A family followed, subdued. Life and death, as normal here as morning coffee. She remembered her first day on the job. How proud she had felt. She had believed in hospice work, in helping people die with dignity, with presence. She still believed in it. It was him who had poisoned it. Her phone buzzed. "Claire. Just heard from someone in admin Shepard's. Been pulled from 2 boards already. Speaking engagement cancelled. There's movement." Marissa typed back, still waiting on the grand jury. "But this feels like the ground shifting. Claire, you shook it loose. However this ends, you already changed something." That night, she was folding laundry when her phone rang again and blocked number. Her heart stuttered. She answered, but this time, the voice was familiar. Ms. Holloway, it's Ada Mehta. The grand jury returned their decision. She braced herself. They indicted on all 3 charges: harassment, witness intimidation, and obstruction. Criminal proceedings will begin in 4 to 6 weeks. You'll receive formal notice shortly. I'll be in touch to schedule prep for trial. Marissa didn't speak for several seconds. When she did, her voice was quiet but firm. Thank you. After the call ended, she sat on the edge of her bed. She expected to feel triumphant. Maybe even relieved, but what she felt was something deeper. Stillness. Wait. Purpose. This wasn't the end. It wasn't even the middle. It was simply the moment the system said, "We're listening now." She picked up her phone and texted Leah, Julia, Carla, Olivia, Danielle, and Claire, all of them. They indicted him. It's happening. The replies came fast. Claire, finally. Leah, I just cried in my car. Danielle, I'm terrified. But I'm with you. Olivia, I'll testify. Every word. Julia, you gave us back our voices. Carla, I'm ready. Outside, the wind moved softly through the trees. For once, it didn't sound like someone watching her. It sounded like something moving forward. The summons for pretrial preparation arrived a week after the indictment. Marissa expected the dread. What surprised her was the clarity. She no longer felt like a woman on the edge of collapse. She was no longer stumbling through fog, unsure if her voice would matter. The grand jury had heard her, believed her. And the system, so often indifferent, so often built to minimize, had finally shifted. Still, trial wasn't justice. Not yet. It was just the next war. The Arlington County Courthouse conference room was beige and windowless. ADA Caroline Mehta stood at the head of the table, flanked by a junior prosecutor and 2 support staff. A case binder sat open in front of her, thick and tabbed with color-coded evidence. Marissa sat across from her, Olivia to her left, and Leah to her right. Danielle was on video call, muted but present. Julia and Carla had opted for separate prep sessions. Their testimonies would focus more on systemic misconduct and retaliation than direct threats. Mehta spoke plainly. Here's what to expect. Shepard's legal team will try to dismantle the narrative, discredit the timeline, challenge the admissibility of the voicemails and recordings. They'll argue lack of context, that it was professional tension, not harassment. You'll be painted as emotional, possibly vindictive. Leah let out a quiet breath. That tracks. But they'll have a harder time now, Mehta added, tapping a document. Because the threats weren't isolated. Because Danielle confirms administrative suppression. And because Olivia can speak directly to patient records being altered. Olivia nodded, jaw tight. I'll say it under oath. We'll prep you all individually this week. You'll walk through your testimony. Anticipate cross-examination. None of it will be easy. But you're not walking in alone. Danielle's voice came through the speaker. What about the foundation? The media? He's still out there, controlling the narrative. Mehta glanced at her team, then back at the group. That's changing. 2 local journalists are pursuing independent investigations. We've asked them to hold off until the trial begins. But once this goes public, Shepard's reputation won't protect him anymore. Marissa stayed quiet. She wasn't celebrating, she was calculating. That night, she pulled a box from the top shelf of her bedroom closet, a box she hadn't touched in years. Inside were old ID badges, certification letters, copies of hospice policies she had annotated during her tenure. At the very bottom, her first evaluation at the facility, written by Stephen Shepard himself. Marissa is efficient, compassionate, and remarkably thorough in patient care documentation. A model nurse. She let out a breath. He had praised her, once. Before she became inconvenient. Before she asked the wrong questions, before he saw her not as a colleague, but as a threat. She added the document to her trial file. It wasn't critical. But it was symbolic. A reminder of how quickly respect turned to retaliation when power was challenged. The next morning, her prep began in earnest. Mehta walked her through her full testimony, question by question. Marissa sat with her back straight, voice even, her years of nursing professionalism returning like muscle memory. When you first reported the record discrepancies, Mehta asked, what was the response? Dismissive. I was told I misunderstood the logging system. Did anyone else see those logs? Yes. Olivia Cross. She confirmed they'd been altered. Did you confront Dr. Shepard? Yes. Once. Informally. He told me to stop stirring the pot. And focus on my shift. After that? The anonymous calls started. Harassing emails. I was scheduled for back-to-back night shifts with no rest period. HR told me it was a staffing shortage. Did you file a formal complaint? Yes. It was resolved without explanation. I was advised to consider transferring. Marissa continued through the timeline, her tone unwavering. When they reached the voicemail, the one she had played in court, Meta paused. This will be played for the jury. His voice. His words. Are you prepared for that moment? I am. If he takes the stand, which is unlikely, but possible, are you prepared to look him in the eye? Marissa's jaw tightened. I'm not afraid of him anymore. If he speaks, I want the jury to hear what I already know. His calm voice hides violence. Later, during a break, Meta handed Marissa a sealed envelope. These are copies of the subpoenas. His financial records. Phone logs. Internal emails from his assistant. The court approved limited access for our use. Inside were excerpts. Point 1. Stood out, a forwarded email from Stephen to Danielle, dated 3 years ago, _re, Holloway keep her quiet. Offer her a consulting title if necessary. If she escalates, I'll handle it another way. Marissa stared at it, then looked up. Another way. Meta nodded. The voicemail was the other way. That night, Claire stopped by Marissa's home with takeout and a bottle of wine. They didn't talk about the trial for a while. Just food. Family. Claire's niece. A neighbor's annoying new puppy. Then Claire said, he's been quiet. Marissa nodded. Too quiet. He's not used to losing control. That's exactly what's happening, Marissa replied. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Claire said, there's a rumor that someone on the board is stepping down. Donor pressure. Shepard's name is starting to cost them. Marissa closed her eyes. That, too, was part of justice, not the courtroom, but the fallout. The quiet undoing of power built on intimidation. He made us feel small for so long, Claire said. But now we're making him small. The next morning, Marissa received a final prep schedule for trial. Court was set for June 10th. 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare. To hold steady. To carry years of silence into a room where 12 strangers would decide whether Stephen Shepard's voice, so smooth, so trusted, would finally be held accountable. She sat down at her laptop and opened a new document. Trial notes, for Meta, final. She typed the first line. He didn't break me. He broke the illusion that silence was safer than the truth. Outside, a breeze moved through the trees again. And for the first time in years, Marissa wasn't waiting for the phone to ring. She was waiting for her day in court. June 10th dawned heavy with heat, the kind that hung thick in the air before the sun even fully rose. Marissa woke before her alarm, the anxiety of the day already buzzing just beneath her skin. She stood by her window for a long time, watching. The sky turned from gray to soft gold. There would be no turning back now. Today, Stephen Shepard would sit at the defense table as a criminal defendant, and she, once silenced, once dismissed, would take the stand. The Arlington County Courthouse was already surrounded by a small crowd by 8 a.m. A handful of local reporters lingered near the steps, jotting notes, holding cameras. Most didn't recognize Marissa when she entered, a benefit of never being in the spotlight. Still, a few heads turned, a few flashes blinked as she passed through security. Claire was waiting for her inside. You okay? She asked. Marissa managed a small, honest smile. Ask me again after I testify. They both knew what today meant. The trial of Dr. Stephen Shepard, public health advocate, board chair, speaker, mentor, would begin with opening arguments. The court had agreed to allow limited media access, meaning excerpts of the proceedings would likely appear online before the week was out. Shepard's defense team was formidable, a polished man named Dale Archer, known for representing high-profile professionals in scandal. He specialized in turning complex accusations into misunderstandings, in painting victims as unstable, overreaching, but Marissa had come prepared, and she wasn't the only one. The courtroom was hushed when the bailiff called the session to order. Stephen sat at the defense table, his gray hair carefully parted, a navy tie with subtle gold dots matching his perfectly tailored suit. From a distance, he looked composed, but Marissa saw it. The tightness in his jaw. The shallow breathing. The way his hands clenched just out of sight beneath the table. He didn't look at her. Judge Lindell, the same judge from the restraining order hearing months ago, took the bench. But this time, her expression was more reserved. Focused. She had already signed the indictment. Now, she would oversee the trial. The jury entered. 12 citizens. 5 women. 7 men. Diverse in age, demeanor, clothing. Marissa studied their faces, some curious, some skeptical, some neutral. None of them knew what today would reveal. Ada Meta rose for the prosecution's opening. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she began, voice steady and precise. Today, you will hear about a man who built a reputation on empathy, and used it to hide abuse. You will hear from women who were silenced, manipulated, and threatened. You will hear a voice that sounds calm, even kind, but carries with it menace. This case is not about a misunderstanding. It is about the weaponization of influence. She outlined the timeline, the altered patient records, the anonymous threats, the recordings, the coordinated efforts to suppress complaints. Then she paused. You will hear from Marissa Holloway, a former hospice nurse. She will not ask for your sympathy. She will show you her evidence. And then Saturday the defense rose. Dale Archer buttoned his suit slowly, walking before the jury like a man delivering a lecture at a university. Dr. Stephen Shepard has dedicated 30 years to end-of-life care. He is not a perfect man, but he is not a criminal. What you will hear today are stories. Stories shaped by time, pain, and, perhaps, resentment. You will hear a voicemail. But you will not hear the full context. You will see accusations. But not evidence of actual harm. He turned toward Marissa's side of the room, and in the end, you must decide whether this is justice, or the unraveling of a man's life based on emotional recall. Saturday Marissa's name was called at 10:17 a.m. She stood slowly, walked to the witness stand. Sworn in. Her hand didn't shake as much as she feared it would. Meta approached first. Ms. Holloway, can you state your profession and years of experience? I'm a registered nurse. I worked in hospice care for 14 years. 7 of those were under Dr. Shepard's administrative leadership. Do you recall the date you submitted your first formal concern about Dr. Shepard's practices? April 4, 2018. What was the nature of that concern? I believed patient records were being altered to cover for deviations in treatment, specifically in pain medication administration. Did you confront Dr. Shepard directly? I did. Informally. He told me to be careful where I directed my questions. What happened next? The late-night calls began. My shifts were rescheduled. I was isolated professionally. Then I received the voicemail. Marissa reached for the small recorder Meta had set beside her. With the judge's permission, the audio played. Stephen's voice filled the room. You were nothing in that place. Just a nurse? You don't even have proof. You're going to disappear, Marissa. When the recording ended, the courtroom was silent. Meta let the quiet linger, then asked, is that his voice? Yes. Did you ever alter this recording? No. Have others confirmed this pattern? Yes. Several women. I submitted their statements. One of them recorded him, too. Have you gained anything from coming forward? No. I lost my job. My license was nearly revoked. My name was questioned in every room I once worked in. I didn't do this for attention. I did it because it was true. Cross-examination came like a slow leak. Archer stood, his expression patient. Ms. Holloway, you say you've suffered professionally since leaving the hospice. But isn't it true you declined 2 offers to return, with improved pay? Yes, Marissa said. Because the environment was still toxic. You also kept the voicemail for over a year before submitting it. Why wait? I waited. Because no one would listen. Until I found the courage to make them. You described Dr. Shepard as retaliatory. But you once praised him in a written evaluation, correct? I did. Before I saw who he really was. You once said you felt invisible in your role. Is it possible that some of what you experienced was shaped by that feeling? Marissa looked directly at him. No. What I experienced wasn't shaped by feelings. It was shaped by his choices. She didn't flinch, neither did the jury. When she stepped down from the witness stand, she didn't look at Stephen, she looked at the jury, and saw, in at least a few eyes, that they had seen her, not as an angry ex-employee, not as a broken woman, but as a witness. A truth-teller. A storm he hadn't seen coming. The trial lasted 4 more days. Olivia testified next, calm, clinical, devastating. She walked the jury through the altered patient records with the precision of someone who knew the system intimately. She confirmed that Stephen had access. That entries disappeared under his login credentials. That the patient, Helen McCarthy, had died in pain because of a deliberate denial of medication, pain that had been documented. Then scrubbed. She should have died in peace, Olivia said softly, her voice cracking for the first time. But she didn't. And we all knew why. Leah followed, her testimony quiet, her posture rigid. She played her own recording of Stephen threatening to bury her. The courtroom seemed to lean closer as it played. There was something chilling about his calm voice in a quiet hallway, delivered with surgical cruelty. Claire spoke too. Not as a direct victim, but as a bridge, someone who had watched the women around her be picked off, isolated, pushed out. Someone who finally said enough. And finally, Danielle, live via video feed from Oregon. Her voice shook as she described being asked to delete emails. Told which messages to forward. Which complaints to lose. She said Stephen never yelled. Never needed to. He didn't have to threaten. He just made you feel like your life would fall apart if you didn't do what he wanted. She paused. Then added, and then, one day, I believed him. The defense tried to counter, casting doubts, pointing to lack of hard evidence, questioning motives. They introduced glowing testimonials from colleagues who hadn't been targeted. Suggested resentment. Questioned memory, but the recordings remained unignorable, unspinnable, his own voice over and over. It undercut every defense. On the fifth day, both sides rested, the courtroom felt taut, stretched like fabric pulled tight at the seams. Marissa sat in the gallery, silent. She hadn't returned to the stand. Her part was done. But her presence mattered. She wanted the jury to see she hadn't vanished. She wanted Stephen to know that this time, she stayed. Closing arguments were delivered with practiced care. Ada Meta stood before the jury one last time. You've heard the recordings. You've read the emails. You've listened to women who risked their careers, their reputations, and their safety to speak the truth. Not for attention. Not for gain. But because they could no longer carry silence. Dr. Shepard counted on their fear. Counted on the world looking away. But today, that ends. Then she stepped back. Dale Archer rose, his tone still calm, but thinner. Now, like a man gripping the final edge of a vanishing ledge, what you've seen is a series of accusations, stitched together by emotion and regret. My client's words were taken out of context. His intentions misunderstood. This is a case of professional tension, not criminal behavior. Let's not allow a man's life's work to be undone by bitter misinterpretation. But even as he spoke, Marissa watched the jury. They weren't leaning forward anymore, they were leaning back, absorbing, measuring, resisting the urge to be pulled into one last illusion. Deliberations took 9 hours. Marissa spent the time pacing her apartment. Not eating, not calling anyone. Just pacing. She didn't pray, but she did speak aloud, once. To Helen McCarthy. To the women who stayed silent. To her younger self. I didn't disappear, she said quietly. I stayed. At 7:43 p.m., her phone rang. It was Meta. We have a verdict. The courtroom was mostly empty when they returned, no press allowed at this stage. Just the judge, the lawyers, the defendant, and those few directly involved. Marissa took her seat. Stephen sat across from her, his lawyer whispering something, his face unreadable. For the first time, he looked smaller. Not just tired. Shrunken. The foreperson stood. An older woman with wire-rimmed glasses and a firm voice. In the matter of the Commonwealth of Virginia versus Stephen Shepard, on count 1, harassment, guilty. Count 2, witness intimidation, guilty. Count 3, obstruction of justice, guilty. 3 words. Repeated, guilty, guilty, guilty. Stephen closed his eyes. Not dramatically, not in disbelief. More like a man who had finally heard the sound of something he thought he'd buried forever. Sentencing would come later. His legal team would appeal. There would be motions, delays, strategy, but none of it changed what had just happened. Marissa walked out into the summer night, the air still warm on her skin. Claire, Olivia, and Leah met her on the courthouse steps. No one cheered. No one clapped, but they stood there, together, shoulders squared. Danielle texted a single word, free. And then another, thank you. In the days that followed, articles surfaced. Health leader convicted in harassment case, hospice whistleblowers. Lead to landmark verdict, voicemail evidence shakes nonprofit world. No one named Marissa in the headlines. And she was fine with that. She hadn't done it for recognition, she had done it so that next time, when someone whispered, something's wrong, people would listen sooner. 2 weeks later, she received a letter handwritten. From Helen McCarthy's daughter. I always knew something wasn't right. I just never imagined anyone would prove it. I wish my mom had died in peace. But I think she'd be proud to know someone stood up for her. You didn't know her. But you gave her back her dignity. Thank you. On a quiet Sunday morning, Marissa walked into the hospice facility for the first time since she'd left. She wasn't there to work, just to visit. A nurse at the front recognized her, surprised. Are you here for someone? No, Marissa said, smiling gently. Just remembering who I used to be. And who I am now. She passed down the hallway where it all began, same soft lights, same gentle hum. But it no longer felt haunted. It felt claimed. She had told the truth, she had been believed, and now, she could finally move on, not because a judge told her to, but because she had earned it.